All right, this is big time. Coming at you today with They're Coming for the Kids, some defensive gun use, and some local Philly black crime. Making MLK proud. So, get right into the articles. Again, presentation is we got the articles before videos. If that works, let me know. Leave a comment. You know the deal. As always, some links in the description of where I get my sources. So, we're going to start with Minnesota. New licensing rules in Minnesota that require teachers to affirm students' transgender identities will meet immediate court challenges from civil liberties advocates. Yeah. So, Minnesota will soon ban faithful Christians, Muslims, and Jews from teaching in public schools by requiring that every state certified teacher fosters an environment that ensures student identities such as gender identity are affirmed. Once the new requirements clear a final procedural hurdle, they will be immediately challenged in state and possibly federal court, a civil liberties lawyer told the Federalist on Tuesday. We have lots of parents who are upset by this sort of thing in schools already, said Doug Seaton, president of Minnesota's Upper Midwest Law Center, in an interview. They're going to be even more upset with how their teachers are going to be licensed. Their teachers are going to have to be faced with hiding their beliefs or getting denied for a state teaching license. Seaton said it was accurate to describe the nearly finalized regulations as communicating Christians, Muslims, and Jews need not apply for Minnesota teaching jobs. That is unconstitutional, he said, so UMLC plans to sue once the changes go into effect. Boy, I hope you win. The state agency that composed the changes disputed they would effectively ban religious Americans from teaching in Minnesota schools through a spokeswoman on Wednesday. Yeah, that's the first. Yeah, that's lefty tactic number one. It's not happening. The spokeswoman did not respond to a follow-up asking how Christian Jews and Muslims could adhere to their faith while complying with the licensing requirements that all new teachers publicly reject their faith's declaration that God has created only two sexes, male and female. We're drawing lines in the sand. Minnesota's Professional Educator Licensing and Standards Board, PELSB, a division of the State Department of Education, has been working to change teacher certification requirements since 2019. Its latest public draft, which is finalized save for a few tweaks that don't affect the content, includes multiple requirements that licensure candidates publicly support critical race theory and transgender ideology and include both in their teaching. Teachers must receive state licensure to be employed in Minnesota public and many private schools. PELSB justified its changes by claiming the predominantly white teacher workforce must be equipped to understand their own implicit bias and the unique lived experience of all their students as a core requirement of teaching. For this reason, PELSB has worked closely with a wide range of stakeholders, including researchers and experts in the field of pedagogy, to ensure that anti-racism, cultural competency, and implicit bias were effectively embedded and identified throughout the scope of the proposed standards of effective practice. Standards for Effective Teaching 1A and the nearly finalized regulations requires a teacher candidate to affirm the validity of students' backgrounds and identities. The teacher understands multiple theories of identity formation and knows how to help students develop positive social identities based on their membership in multiple groups in society. Teacher understands that students bring assets for learning based on their individual experiences, abilities, talents, prior learning, and peer and social group interactions, as well as language, culture, family, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. They're asset-based mindset, affirming the validity. Yeah. Standard 2D requires that a licensed teacher fosters an environment that ensures student identities such as race, ethnicity, sex and gender identity, sexual orientation are historically and socially contextualized, affirmed, and incorporated into a learning environment where students are empowered to learn. I don't think first graders need to learn about butt sex. Am I crazy? Standards 2F mandates that the teacher communicates verbally and non-verbally in ways that demonstrate respect for and responsiveness for the cultural backgrounds and differing prospective learners bring to the learning environment. Teacher understands and supports students as they recognize and process dehumanizing biases, discrimination, prejudice, and structural inequities. Black people commit more carjackings in Philadelphia. There were 1,330 something carjackings in Philadelphia in 2022. What percentage of them were from the Black community? Tell me about the black culture now and how they like carjacking people. Standard 6 AG requires teachers to agree that the taxpayers supplying their salaries and the people who created the school system that will employ them are racists and affirm other cultural Marxist beliefs. For example, Standard 6E requires that the teacher understands the historical foundations of education in Minnesota that have and continue to create inequitable opportunities, experiences, and outcomes for learners, especially for students historically denied access, underserved, or underrepresented on the basis of race, gender, sexual orientation. Yeah. So here it is. You can see it. The teacher understands how prejudice, discrimination, and racism operates at the interpersonal, intergroup, and institutional levels. Well, it's not my fault if your kids don't do their homework, and I still have to question why it's my responsibility to pay for. So let me see. One group of people gets free breakfast, free lunch. They get Section 8 subsidized housing where you're paying $100 a month for a 3-bedroom home. You get food stamps. You get SNAP. I mean, how much money? What exactly are you denied? When you go to the hospital, when your kids kill each other and carjack people and they get shot, they get world-class surgery at the hospital. The military sends physicians to Baltimore before they go to Iraq to learn how to sew up gunshot wounds. Fun little fact I learned. The standards also require teachers to instruct their students in critical race theory and mandates that teachers promote anti-racism and equity. Those two terms are defined by other advocates to mean instituting structural racism against people with comparatively lighter skin and using skin color to judge people's merit and performance. Oh, well, merit, that doesn't exist anymore. We're trying to get rid of tests. But you can see it here, and I have the link in the description. Before the licensure changes can go into effect, they must be reviewed once more by an administrative law judge. The judge already reviewed the proposal and recommended 4 tweaks that do not change the content of the requirements, merely their wording to comply with regulatory technicalities. Since the board made the changes he requested, the judge is likely to approve the tweaked draft PELSB sent back to him. On December 17th, 2022, Seaton said, PELSB expects these licensing changes to go into effect at the latest by the spring. Its spokeswoman said, spokeswoman told the Federalist that PELSB has made it impossible for those practicing Orthodox Christianity and Judaism, as just 2 examples, to freely exercise their religion and simultaneously hold a teaching license. Well, I don't really think you should be teaching. I'm not necessarily sure how I feel about religion being taught in school. If children don't want to learn religion in school, they don't have to learn it. But again, at the same time, I don't want to hear that white people created racism. I also don't want to hear that George Floyd was a saint. Okay? He died how he died, and that's his own fucking fault. I don't like home invaders, and junkies don't make good parents. Okay? It makes it impossible for those colleges who seek to teach students how to teach to also maintain a distinctly Orthodox Christian message on this key tenet of Orthodox Christianity. It compels potential licensees to speak the PELSB's chosen beliefs of an established creed and live them out in order to have a job. Yeah, I still don't know what's wrong with math and English. It establishes the PELSB's view of human sexuality and gender as orthodoxy despite sincere opposition based on biological reality and traditional Orthodox theistic beliefs. Seaton noted in written comments to the administrative law judge who approved nearly all the standards in December. PELSB's members are appointed by the governor, Tim Walz, a Democrat who was reelected in 2022. After Minnesotans filled up public meetings to protest these licensure changes in fall 2022, PELSB told news outlets the changes will only apply to new licensed candidates, not renewals, meaning you'll filter them out eventually. State licensed Minnesota teachers must renew their licenses every 1 to 5 years. They have claimed they won't apply to renewals, but the statute says it will. Julie Quist, chairwoman of Minnesota's Child Protection League, told the Federalist. So they came out after all the criticism to say that this doesn't apply to renewals, but the statute hasn't been changed. They can say they're not going to enforce it, but that means they can change their mind anytime they want to. Yeah, they just lie and say it doesn't, and then they do it anyway. Minnesota already requires all teachers to take classes in cultural competency to renew their license. a change that went into effect in 2020. These classes include training on bias regarding sexual orientation and gender identity, which is made up bullshit. College teacher preparation programs in Minnesota will also have to comply with these new requirements. PELSB has conflict by requiring religious institutions to end behaviors and ideologies that conflict with their public confessions of faith, Seaton said. We have people in other employment settings who are being presented with this affirmation and carrying the flag for these ideas, Seaton said. So we have people who are quitting and being terminated and disciplined already in Minnesota over being forced to publicly agree with critical race theory and transgender ideology in order to keep their jobs. PELSB noted that many teachers' preparation programs in Minnesota have already adopted these changes. The new standards are already embedded into their programs. The state university system has embarked on an Equity 2030 campaign across all majors that demands faculty must find a way to engineer identical outcomes among all demographic groups. It's not my fault Black people value violence and criminals over all the other groups. It's not my fault Black kids suck at taking tests. I have a hard time understanding how a test is culturally biased when Asians and Indians and Middle Easterns can come here who don't even speak the language and they can score higher than white people. I don't understand that. We see a left-wing capture of school boards and educational agencies all over the country, even in red states, Seaton noted. So I think it is likely this thing will be seen in other parts of the country as well. The Upper Midwest Law Center is seeking plaintiffs for its legal challenges to the new licensing regime, Seaton said, such as religious students studying to become public school teachers and Christian colleges to participate in the state's teacher licensing programs. Many people don't understand how far along we are, but there's no question that far along we are because it's in statute now, and I don't exactly know how we're going to turn this around, but we've committed to it, Quist said. Quist said one place to start would be for private institutions to develop teacher training and certification programs, and for religious and other schools to use such independent programs instead of state certification. Right, you got to make your own shit. And then you got to keep your people in charge of that shit and don't let their people to take over it, because once they take over, they'll try to push you out. That's always the way it works. They say you're racist, that you're not letting them in. You create something, they move in, they say how racist it is, then they push you out, and then they take over. She also suggested that churches, community organizations, and foundations get more serious about starting and funding private alternatives to public schools so children can get an indoctrination-free education. Yeah. They're coming for the kids. Damn religion. I always wondered how they were going to fight against the Muslims. You know, there was a big thing, there was a big Muslim thing in some place in London. This guy made a video on the offensive. He made this video where the Muslims basically protested about proselytizing homosexuality to their children, and the MPs backed down. So in that case, the Muslims were able to win. It doesn't mean that in all cases Muslims are against homosexuality. I mean, if you don't, you should look up Bakabazi and just see just see the hypocritical bullshit that Bakabazi is. Anyway, next story. Scotland. Serial rapist seeking transfer to woman's prison following name change. A serial rapist who targeted women in changing rooms and restrooms. Wow, how did he get access to that? It's almost like weak people are just afraid of being called phobic. Is now identifying as transgender and is seeking to be transferred to a woman's prison in Scotland. Jonathan Malone, 40, was sentenced to life in prison in 2014 on a slew of rape charges. He has now begun referring to himself as Charlene and has allegedly been bragging that he will be in a woman's prison by the spring, according to a report by the Scottish Sun. The serial rapist is currently housed in a men's prison in Edinburgh. Malone has a lengthy criminal history related to violence against women. Over the course of a 14-year period, he racked up 21 charges in the communities of Glasgow, I can't say that word, Renfrewshire, and Greenock. Between December 1999 and March 2013, he raped 5 women and sexually abused a 6th. All of Mallon's victims were age 31 or younger. 2 of his victims were women he met at a church. In 2014, prosecutor Keith Harper told the court that Mallon also had previous convictions for domestic abuse, violence, carrying a knife, and fire raising, also referred to as arson. Wow, they outlawed knives, so now they're London. During sentencing, one survivor told the court how Mallon raped her in a cubicle at Scottstown swimming baths while families with young children were nearby. She added that after the incident, he told you, "Do you know what I've just done to you? I've graped you." It was kind of like he was gloating. Another victim was raped in the bathroom at the Odeon Cinema in Glasgow. The High Court judge in Glasgow told Mallon that his conduct could only be described as monstrous. Are you going to punish the person or not? Nobody cares what you think. What are you going to do to punish him? Noting that in total, his offenses were carried out against 6 women, each of whom was vulnerable in one way or another. It's clear that you saw women who were vulnerable and ruthlessly exploited them for your own sexual gratification. After being convicted, Malone was reportedly weeping on the dock, to which the judge stated, "I hope that your tears are for the women whose lives you have ruined." Okay, we're moving in the right direction. 10 years later, Malone is eager to be around women once again, inside sources told The Sun. One fellow inmate reportedly said Malone has been saying to people he has changed his name by deed poll and is going to the women's hall in 3 months. But I don't think he is. I don't know how they can put a sex offender who grapes women into a women's hall. I'm sure prison bosses will see through it. I think you're too optimistic. The news comes just weeks after the Scottish government voted down amendments to its controversial gender self-identification laws, which, if included, would have prohibited sex offenders from changing their identification during or after court proceedings. Tory member of Scottish Parliament Russell Finlay, who proposed the amendment, said it would prevent those male criminals who already lie and deceive to commit serious wrongdoing and whose victims are almost always women and girls. Wow, I'm blown away. Has somebody actually caught on to the game now? In December, somebody's playing Nancy Drew, huh? In December, the Gender Recognition Reform Bill was passed by MSPs in a vote of 86 to 39, removing the need for a medical diagnosis of gender dysphoria in order to obtain a gender recognition certificate. Shona Robinson, Social Justice Secretary, said the GRR bill simplifies and improves the process for a trans person to obtain a gender recognition certificate, which many currently find intrusive, medicalized, and bureaucratic. The passing of this bill is a significant step forward in creating a more equal Scotland where trans people feel valued, included, and empowered. Yeet into the sun. A bid to stop anyone using self-ID while awaiting trial for a sex attack was also voted down. Robinson said there is no evidence that predatory and abusive men have ever had to apply for legal gender recognition to carry out their behavior. The guy's literally bragging about it. Right, again, lefty tactic number 1. It's not happening. The Parliament ultimately did pass an amendment which removed the right of anyone with a sexual harm or sexual offense prevention order to be allowed a legal gender change document. As a result, Malone's request to transfer prisons may be blocked. Boy, I hope it is. Wow, some common sense. So if you're a man and you've committed crimes against women, they're not going to allow you to change your gender. Okay. I'm kind of impressed. Finlay said Mallon's request is the latest case of a predatory male sex offender seeking access to a women's prison. Nicola Sturgeon's new gender self-ID law will lead to an inevitable increase in such cases, putting some of Scotland's most vulnerable women at increased risk. Correct. As previously revealed by Redux, serial child abuser Katie Dolatowski was recently sent to a women's institution to serve a 4-month sentence despite his long history of sex attacks against young girls in public facilities. Dolatowski, 22, was allowed to identify into a woman's prison despite the court being aware that he had violently assaulted an inmate in 2021 while incarcerated at a men's facility. Corton Vale, the prison where Dolatowski is currently serving his sentence, is a Scottish national facility for both remanded and convicted female prisoners. It is designed to hold a maximum of 119 women and has a separate mother and baby unit with 7 spaces. If Mallon's transfer request is approved, he could similarly end up in another Cornton Vale or in the Rathrow House wing of the Capital Jail. The policy allowing the transfer of male inmates to female correctional facilities was backed by a senior official at the Scottish Prison Service who was convicted in 2016 on charges related to the possession of child sexual abuse materials. Gordon Pike, responsible for the prison service's gender identity and gender reassignment policy, pleaded guilty at Paisley Sheriff Court to hoarding 22,000 indecent pictures of children. Last April, it was revealed that a trans-identified male inmate convicted of murder has begun identifying as an infant and demanding diapers to wear from prison officials. Oh boy. It's like you just can't accept you've been caught, huh? You just gotta, you can't accept. Well, I guess you're not a prisoner if you're free in your mind, right? Shortly after being detained, correctional officers gave Sophie Eastwood the nickname Hannibal Lecter Jr. due to the chilling mind games the inmate would play with the staff, one of which caused a female guard to quit her post after just one shift with him. Yep. Yeah, they're not coming for women's spaces, right, guys? No, no, no. No, no. All right. Now back to America. Project Veritas exposes education specialists bragging about violating Georgia ban on CRT. There he is. Quintic Bostic, PhD, content manager, the teaching lab. I got to say this about Project Veritas.
With an IRA reform,
they get hot women to do the job. Men definitely are suckers for a pretty smile and a nice pair of tits, huh? I don't know how he gets all these stupid people to admit, this is the ploy. They take you out to dinner and get you to reveal your soul. I'll say that about Veritas. They must have really good-looking women and men, because there are gay men who come out and admit things to men as well. Did you see that one video where the guy said, Veritas? What's that? That was hilarious. A newly released video from Project Veritas has revealed teaching lab director Dr. Quintin Bostic bragging about violating Georgia's ban on teaching critical race theory in schools through the curriculum he sells to districts in the state. Project Veritas founder James O'Keefe revealed that Bostic had his teaching license revoked around 2017 when he was a literacy educator. Bostic now works for Teaching Lab as a content manager with a $15 million budget dedicating to creating more equitable curriculums. Can I pull it up? O'Keefe added that Bostic now sells curriculum he made to schools in Georgia, and that he has multiple private companies where he profits on the curriculum that he sells. And it's amazing how you've gotten the schools to purchase the curriculum, the Project Veritas journalist said. And they don't even know what's going on, said Bostic. I would say that I'm a good salesman, but I'm also an evil salesman, like so bad.
If you don't say the words of the race theory, you technically teach it.
And it's amazing how you've gotten the schools to purchase the curriculum.
And they don't even know what's going on. I was having
Shout out to Andy No.
good salesman, but I'm also an evil salesman. Like, so bad.
So the public schools have the state funding, right?
They do.
So the state is basically paying for your curriculum without knowing what's in it. Does your curriculum have critical race theory in it?
Yep.
And the government doesn't know.
And they have no clue. And I'm like, this is good.
In order to make sure it's under the radar, how do you
This is DEI work.
schools in Georgia have your curriculum?
Two districts, actually. So, Cook County and then Cobb County.
Wait, your curriculum that is in the schools here in Georgia is just kindergarten?
It's just, if one of his was kindergarten, yeah.
That's so cool. So you get your CRT stuff is
Kindergarten. It's so good. It's like such an idiot. Like, his wife is lots of in education here. Those are former teacher.
What do you think she would do if she found out there's CRT?
Oh, I would get nailed or shit.
What about those parents who might push back after doing it?
Who cares? I'm not part of the system. I can't lose I'm not gonna lose my job over it. Worst is gonna happen, I'm gonna be upset. And I shared some knowledge. That's the worst is gonna happen. This is how we handle things.
Awesome. That's right. No problem teaching my people that we're evil, right? No problem, right? So my children got to suffer so this fucking twink can make a buck, huh? Gonna try to brainwash my children, huh? Yeah, keep fucking with kids, bro. When the journalist asked if the schools have state funding, Bostic replied, they do. So the state is so we saw all that. So the state is basically paying for your curriculum without knowing what's in it, the journalist said. Bostic revealed that two districts, Fulton County and Cobb County, use his curriculum, and that the curriculum is aimed at kindergarten-age students. Atlanta, Georgia's largest cities, lies in Fulton County. In another clip, Bostic revealed that he makes the money off of selling this curriculum, not the teaching lab, and the state pays for it. When the state pays for your stuff, they don't know that critical race theory is in it, the journalist said. Right, of course, they don't know. They don't know. I mean, so basically it just goes right into the account. The journalist clarified whether that was his account or Teaching Lab's account, which Bostic revealed it was his account. When asked if critical race theory teaching was illegal in Georgia, Boston said that if you don't say the word critical race theory, you can technically teach it. And people don't know what critical race theory is, so when they see the word, alarm goes off. But if you teach the principles of the people are like, of course. But if you teach, no. So does your curriculum have critical race theory in it? The Project Veritas journalist asked. Yes, replied Bostic, and the government doesn't know. They have no clue. And I'm like, this is great. This is good. Bostic revealed that behind the scenes, he messages to make sure teachers teach his curriculum in a certain way, using certain words and books. Bostic called Governor Brian Kemp an idiot, noting that his new wife is a former teacher. What do you think she would do if she found out that they're CRT? The Project Veritas journalist asked in regard. Oh, I'd be nailed for sure. The worst I could say happening is having his business license revoked. He's already had his teaching license revoked, right? But continued on to say, I can keep consulting. Bostic said that you can teach kids things under the radar through his curriculum. When asked how he keeps the true content of the curriculum under the radar, Bostic responded that he calls it diversity, equity, and inclusion work. Bostic also took aim at parents, saying, I hate to say it, but parents aren't teachers. Parents are ignorant, the journalist chimed in. They are, replied Bostic. In another clip, Bostic was revealed saying that kids are pushing back against their parents, and that's the goal. The goal, he said, was to eventually get kids to influence their parents to make the shift too. When the journalist asked about parents who might push back after hearing it, Bostic replied, who cares? I'm not part of the system. I'm not going to lose my job. The worst that's going to happen is y'all going to be upset that I shared some knowledge. That's the worst that's going to happen. Yep. It's okay to teach white kids they're evil, right? As long as we feel guilty, we'll just keep giving you our resources, right? Isn't the black community great? There's no outrage over this, right? Well, the black community could get money. They can get our home. We should give them our homes, our cars, our resources, my job, my paycheck. Just child sacrifice. It's just child sacrifice, right? As long as we feel guilty, you will always have access to our resources, right? And people wonder why they talk about ethnostates. All right, so for the defense of gun use, this is the Gun Violence Archive. This is a source link in the description. I covered defensive gun uses because you're never going to hear them on social media or even in the mainstream media. I covered stories of when people defend themselves using guns. So we'll start here. Escambia County shooting deemed self-defense. Juvenile shooter won't be charged. Florida, deputies say a juvenile who shot a 47-year-old man in Escambia County will not be charged. The Escambia County Sheriff's Office says the shooting around noon on Saxon Street is a self-defense case. According to the Sheriff's Office, the man who was shot, 47-year-old Patrick Antone Davidson, is charged with aggravated battery, domestic violence. Jail records show he is also facing charges of fleeing, eluding police, resisting arrest, and driving without a license. Davidson was hospitalized for his injuries Monday afternoon following the shooting. He's being held in Escambia County Jail on no bond. I wonder what happened. Still, if it's been deemed self-defense, that's fine with me. All right, let's hit a couple of the videos. I think I have 2 more self-defense shootings. Unfortunately, this isn't, this is a guy who was able to fight back, and, good for him for fighting back. Unfortunately, he passed.
In Philadelphia's Frankfurt neighborhood, we just learned a man shot while trying to defend himself from gunfire has died. It happened about an hour and a half ago at the corner of Frankfurt and Folkrod. Police say a man walked up to the victim and started fired back. The shooter then ran off. In all, at least 9 shots were fired. The victim died at the hospital.
Yeah, and that's a shame. So this guy came up to him, started opening fire. This guy was able to return fire, but unfortunately, he passed. That's going to happen. Just having it is not a guarantee, I give this guy credit for being brave enough and believing in himself enough to actually fight back. So rest in peace, brother. All right. We also got a story of a security guard at Philly City Hall. Apparently some sort of shot somebody with sharp objects. Let's see.
Marshals. If we zoom in a little bit closer to those orange cones right there, we can see a few evidence markers near that tree. This is all happening in front of the federal prison near 7th and Arch in Center City. Now, the FBI and U.S. Marshals Office just spoke to us. Take a look at this video. They say around 9:30 this morning, there was a car parked illegally outside the courthouse here in parking that's reserved for law enforcement. Per common practice, they say court security came up to the car, and that's when they say a 40-year-old man came out with several, at least 2, sharp weapons. U.S. Marshals did not clarify what exactly the weapons are. Now, officials say the man kept walking forward and did not listen when the security officer asked him to put down the weapons. They say the officer feared for his life, so shot the.
So I see some scissors. Okay. I'm not sure how I feel about this. I mean, I didn't see it. Is this a guy who, I'm surprised the black community isn't coming forward. Was this a black guy shot? Was he having a mental episode? So we have a cop who shot somebody, and all I have is a picture of some scissors. So I don't really know. This one's a big question mark for me.
The man multiple times. They tell us the man is currently in surgery with multiple gunshot wounds. Now, of course, we're getting a better picture from chopper up above. We saw 2 knives on the ground, and we saw investigators looking.
Were those knives? Okay. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, look, man, if a guy comes at you with 2 knives, yeah, fuck him, blow him away. But again, if that's the case, yeah, okay. I just, sometimes I don't always take the cop's word. I like to see the camera. But yeah, if that's the case, if a guy got out of a car, if what they're saying is true, if a guy got out of a car with knives, a knife in each hand, and he doesn't obey orders, I mean, I'm not sure what to say. You're gonna, Darwinism.
The man multiple times. They tell us the man is currently in surgery with multiple gunshot wounds. Now, of course, we're getting a better picture from chopper up above. We saw 2 knives on the ground, and we saw investigators looking into a white minivan with Pennsylvania plates. But of course, we're hoping to hear more updates as the day progresses, as they continue their investigation. Back live, officials have not said when they're going to be finishing up their investigation. So this part of 7th Street between Market and Arch, that's currently blocked up.
Okay, so maybe a cop, maybe defensive gun use. It sounds like a defensive gun use. All right, and then 2 more stories from local Philly crime. One, we got a good one. One predator off the street.
Alleged child predators behind bars in Chester County, and police fear there may be more victims. Tylee Crawford is charged with sexually assaulting as many as 6 children between the ages of 6 and 17 over 5 years. So from 2014 to 2019. In some cases, he allegedly gave them drugs and alcohol. In one, he's accused of beating and holding a teenage victim against their will inside his Coatesville home. Authorities also finding stored photos of a 6-year-old victim in an online folder. Alleged child.
A 6-year-old victim. Now, I wonder, I'm waiting when the black community will come forward and say they're tired of the abuse in their community, or they're tired of the child abuse in their community. I also believe in the Easter Bunny too. So, and finally, little Philly crime over the weekend, to remember MLK, let's see what the black community is up to in Philly.
We begin breaking news, night of violence, capping this MLK Day in Philadelphia. His message of peace and nonviolence fueling many events earlier today.
And Marxism. He didn't write the speech. He plagiarized on his doctoral thesis. He was in love with a white woman, but his handlers told him he had to be with a black woman in order to spread his message. There's a lot of things they don't really teach you about MLK, is there?
But as soon as the sun.
Universal basic income is not a Yeah, that's not a conservative value.
Began to set gunshots. There have been at least 4 separate shootings in just 3 hours. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sheba Russell. A 12-year-old boy is one of the 4 victims. 2 did not survive. Eddie Kadam live for us at police headquarters. And Eddie, police say there's one key piece of evidence missing in the case of the 12-year-old. Please fill us in on that and also how he's doing tonight.
Well, please tell us, thankfully, that 12-year-old boy is in stable condition tonight. The family telling police that they heard a gunshot and realized that that 12-year-old boy had been shot. When police got on scene, they quickly rushed him to the hospital. They say he was on the 2nd floor in his bedroom. They haven't found a gun at the scene. And
I love this guy. This guy does all the shootings in Philly. This guy must get overtime pay like a motherfather, man.
holding the house as a crime scene at this point. Police say at least one shot was fired, and it may have hit the boy in his arm and his torso. Police believe this was an accidental shooting and that there were several other young children inside the property at the time.
There were several other young children inside the property, several. And there were also adults, young adults inside the property, male as well as female. But since we can't find the gun and we can't find any other ballistic evidence, and we're not being told by the adults where the gun is.
Well, the black community has a no snitching policy. So even when one of their children is shot, they won't talk to you. Why is that? When you teach black children that the police are racist and the police are slave patrols hunting them every day, when you teach them that since kindergarten, are you really surprised when they don't cooperate with the police? You can't, on the one hand, say police are racist. We have to teach children that the police are killing them, and then suddenly be so fucking surprised when they don't cooperate. Do you see the connection?
Really not getting full cooperation. When you have children, several children inside of a property, and you have a gun, that gun should be locked away somewhere safe where a child can't get a hold of it.
Now, on that note, I kind of agree. My thing is, see, they're going to try to pass this California law, which is, oh, your gun at all times has to be in a safe when you're in your home. But that's not going to apply to police officers. When police officers go to schools, they have a gun on. The gun is in a holster. I think that should be the stipulation to having a gun out in your home. It has to be on your person in a holster where the trigger is covered or locked away. If the gun is in a trigger, if the gun is holstered on your person, it's hard for the child to play with it, right? Because again, police officers talk to kids, they go to schools, they go to hospitals, and what do they have? They have a gun on their belt. So I would like you to apply the same things you do to the citizens as well. Okay?
Because it could be very
Children should not play with guns. If you want to teach your kids at a very young age, take them to a gun range and teach them how to shoot a rifle, something like that. Yes, that is the responsibility of the parents. Yes, you have to lock them away. Or, as in my case, when I lived in Philly, I used to have a hammer under my pillow, and I used to have a baseball bat next to the bed. And then when I moved further into central Pennsylvania, I now keep something on my person even when I sleep. It's in a strong holster. The holster locks in place at the bottom, and I keep that on me because that's just where I'm from. But there's no way you'd have to pry it off of me. Okay. So that to me is the answer of, oh, it needs to be in a safe. That's my answer. So anyway, I'm big time. That was the stream. That's news to me.